My friends, what's up, the clubs? Okay, we got another week, another Golf Tips Weekly. So let's jump right in. So last week we were talking about the right side and release. Okay, right side for a right-handed golfer, or I guess in that case a left side for a left-handed golfer is very, very, very important. Today we're going to be talking about more how the left side, if you're a right-handed golfer, or the lead side makes the most sense, and how it really incorporates into the golf swing. So, anyway, again, just a reminder, here's what we've done so far. We've done our takeaway. We've done our backswing, right? We've done our transition. We've loaded the club, downswing, and now we're ready to release the ball. Last week, we talked a lot about supination. So, the right hand supinates. The right hand has to supinate. You can't just rely solely on the left hand, right? So if you get a lot of extension in your right wrist, right, for the supination, okay, by nature, your left hand is also going to have flexion in it. Flexion, not extension. The left hand and left hand supination and inflection. Also, it's like 35, maybe 30 degrees out right now, just to let you know. So if I sound a little chilly, that is why, and apologies about the wind. We are going to be upping our audio and video quality game shortly here. So anyway, okay, we have the left hand. So the left hand does play a role. It's just usually, for the most part, your right side is dominant. And if you're a right-handed golfer, but people, or a lot of instruction video tends to focus on the left. It's like, oh, well, you know, flex your wrist up here. Like, all these moves where you're flexing and you're not neutral or even a little extending is extremely hard to do. Plus, what isn't being said, which maybe is being saved for some sort of individual lesson, has to do with you have to get yourself into a position where you're actually able to flex your wrist. It's not just something that you can do without changing a bunch of other dynamics in the swing. So, anyway, when we come down, we talked a lot about supination last week. Supination, in my mind, is the reason why so many really good golfers, pros, etc., plus, it's all that. It's how they can rotate so well. Because again, you can rotate as hard as you want, but if your club face is open, right, or it's coming from the top or whatever, and your club face isn't square, or it's super shut coming down from the top, your rotation is irrelevant. So the face condition, which is controlled by forearms, arms, hands, when I refer to it as hands, that's what I'm referring to. Some people might say, well, it's more forearms or wrists. It's just, for me, it's in my own golf swing, I refer to it as hands, but probably the most accurate representation is arms, forearms, wrists, and hands, but most likely it's really wrist conditions, forearms. It's just I refer to it as hands. So anyway, when we come down, it's your wrist conditions, forearm conditions that are going to dictate the face, right? Because we don't square the face with our body, because it's a spin out and all sorts of compensations. So again, the release part is fun when we're coming down, but we want to make sure that we focus on a lot of supination, right? Supination, squaring the club face as early as possible without, and when I mean squaring the club face, it's really hard to do, because when you're coming down, like if you try to square the club face early, what it can lead to is over the top, casting, releasing early, moving. So it's not just this like simple process of, hey, we're just going to do it. That's why the other 4 important steps that we talked about are such a focus point. So again, in my opinion, what dictates how well you rotate is supination. So there's a lot of emphasis on wrist conditions and squaring the club face correctly, which you don't do with your body, you do with your wrist conditions. That's why the backswing and having it set up and having the mat matchups right? So let's just talk about having a shut face. Okay, laid off, super shut face, I have a flex wrist. What people don't realize is you have to work hard to make sure that the club, basically in your hands, that's why when you have very little depth like Dustin Johnson, if you're right here, right, very little depth, what he does is he moves his hands basically down. So he's resisting very, very hard with his shoulders, but he's also flexing and his pelvis is opening up, but he's resisting, right? So that, because if he didn't resist and he moved down, it moves down instantly, and look how shut club face is. So in order to support a really shut club face, you have to come in extremely flat, right? So if you get to here with a shut club face, I mean, you're basically good to go. But in order to get to that standpoint, it's extremely hard. So when we talk about supination and wrist conditions, that's why all that matters way before we actually get to the release. So that being said, how the left hand works, I think it's really dependent upon you as a golfer. So if you're fortunate enough to be a right-handed golfer and be left-eye dominant, you probably can let your head rotate a little bit through impact, and it's not going to impact you basically coming over the top. Because when you see most right-eye dominant golfers, right? Let's just take a Brooks or a Hideki. When they're coming through, there's counter rotation with the head. What this does is ensure the eyelid stays down or slightly right of target, but it also ensures that you're going to also come from the inside. We don't really want, even if you're playing a fade, to come, over. That can jam you. So for Dustin Johnson, there's a big trend through impact with the left side, where it's letting your head rotate. I mean, that's fine if it works for you, but just know that your head rotation can very much impact how you come into the ball. So if you're letting your head float and you're rotating and it's working, hey, great. But just if you get to a point where maybe you're hitting a slice or something like that, it could be because your head is rotating, and the head, when it rotates like that, it's allowing the club to come over and tip a bit, and your path might just be getting a little bit too far left, and suddenly your matchups that worked when it wasn't rolling that much aren't really working. So now you're hitting pulls or slices or what have you, and you're coming at a less optimal path. So anyway, circling back to the left side, we talked about right side very dominant. For me, and what I think for most golfers want to think that the left side is very dominant, it's not a great way of thinking, because I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think your left side is ancillary or is a Robin to right side being Batman. So if your right side isn't working well, your left side's not going to work well. I think if you were a person who is left side dominant, you might not be watching these videos anyway, because if you're left side dominant, you probably have the ability to flex your wrist in transition, which is a major skill. So anyway, the left side comes up, right? And when it comes down, I mean, we want to have, it's called dual supination. So the first piece was your right side extension and supination, but coupled with that, you then do want to feel, the moving down, but it's not moving down towards the ball like this. You're still resisting, right? So the wrist is pointing, the top of the hand is pointing towards the ground. So you're supinating and shutting the face, but you're still resisting pre-impact and into release. Because if you just let yourself roll and you did this, you'd hit a mile hooker, you'd probably miss the ball. You wouldn't be able to, flow through the ball. So again, where the left side plays the role really has to do with how good your right side is moving. Now, sometimes with alignment, what can be more dominant on the left side is, right, we have a nice steep angle of attack, okay? Something to practice, something to consider. And again, a lot of this is trial and error, what works best for you. There's not a one size fits all. There's not, other than maybe address or alignment or getting, how to look at the ball correctly or down the line, there's not one simple drill that's just going to be like, oh, okay, I can fix it now. A lot of it is trial and error, and a lot of it is understanding what works best for you. So something you could work on is with the left shoulder, right? If you're swinging, right, I would say for supination, focus a little bit more on the right side. Because I think that in general, for most people, the right side will dictate how the left side works. Okay? So when you're coming through, what you could feel for the left side is making sure, because at this point here, there's tons of tension. I have to, it's secondary now, it's secondary nature now, but if you're not used to it, you have to make sure that when your lower body is pushing, it's like pushing through your upper body, right? Because we don't want to swing together, right? We want the lower body to push through while the upper body resists, #separation, right? So with your left shoulder and with your left arm, you might want to feel, instead of focusing all on supination, when when the right side's extending, you could feel that this part of your wrist, right, this wrist bone right here, stays down the line more than what you think it should. Now, maybe you're going to hit some shanks, maybe you're going to do whatever, but it's worth sticking with. The reason why I'm saying that is because we have so much force. We're not doing a hip bump, right? We don't do that. That's nonsense, right? So you're coming down the line. Most people here are going to go, oh, I need to turn over and shut the face, right? But with the left hand, with the extension of the right wrist, with the left hand, I want you to feel, one thing, your wrists need to be super loose. You can't have ultra tense wrists to do this. I mean, extension, there's some tension in there, but you're not holding it. You don't want to feel forced or holding it or anything else like that. So anyway, circling back to that, with loose arms, obviously you want to hold on to the club. With loose arms, from right about here, you're going to go, oh God, I need to turn over. It's like, no, you don't. I want you to I don't want you to feel, especially if you're used to, I have to weight shift first. Don't worry about that. We'll get to that, right? Your right side loaded, transition, downswing. So from here, it's like, what I want you to do is we want to really work on supination. That's our focus. Supination, I think will make anybody better the more you can supinate. So I want you to feel, without doing any lateral shifting, I want you to feel like this wrist stays down the line longer. Now, as long as you're not locking out your wrist and letting it flow, what'll happen is it's going to feel like this. So suddenly, look at this position. I am in such a good position. My hips are open. My shoulders are still pretty level and down the line. My sternum's open. And at this point, this is where the passiveness, where your hand-eye, assuming your face isn't, wide open or super shut, your hand-eye eventually is going to go, okay, fine, I'm here. Now I can release the club, and you can get that extension, right? So one of the best ways to practice it is with a wedge. So I got a 56 degree here. Sorry for the sniffles. It's super cold out, as I mentioned. With the wedge, it's pretty easy because it's a short club, right? So lots of people I have to hit down on a wedge. A wedge, in order to hit it lower, you generally want to hit it softer. It's not about necessarily just hitting down on it. So when you hit the wedge, this might be an easier way, where try putting the ball a little bit more forward in your stance. Most people with a wedge, they'll play it back here. You don't do that, right? And we will be putting out wedge videos. We're going to be putting all sorts of content out. We are going to be releasing a subscription for $11 a month. So this might be one of the last videos where it's a full-blown, basically, lesson. But anyway, that being said, so try putting the ball a little bit more forward. Maybe even off this foot here, right? And what this is designed to do is to get you comfortable with rotating more, right? And through the release, so we're gonna do a little butt shot here. Most people think it should be this. Here, here, here. No. It's watch my sacrum here, right? So it shifts back, shifts back. Then I'm gonna flex, and maybe it moves a little forward, but that's because of the flex. It's not because I'm trying to shift my weight. So I shift a little bit down, watch my sacrum. It moves away from the target. And what does that do from the front? Shifts down here, moves away from the target. That's rotation. That's where rotation is coming from. So if you look at, one of the best examples, or even early Bubba Watson, or even now too, but he's a really rotational guy. His butt line shifts a little bit and then moves away from the target. Look at Cam Champ. Look at any of these ultra rotational guys. Look at Dustin Johnson. It moves a little bit away, and they're releasing. They're releasing. Early Tiger, probably Tiger now. But what that does is it creates space for your arms. Because if you try to release and you try to get on your left side, look what I just did, right? I extended my left pelvis and left hip, or lead hip. What we want to do is we want an extension in the backswing, flexion in the downswing, and when you flex here, what does that do? It's body biomechanics that set you up to automatically rotate. You don't even have to try. It just happens. Extension, flexion, boom. And that's why we can afford, so as long as you're rotating, this club handle can stay down the line a little longer, and that'll give you the shaft lean, and that'll allow you to feel, even though you're behind the ball, you're getting a shaft lean, you're not going to dump it. But if you're shifting here and you try to do that, the only thing you can do is tilt, and you're going to dump it. So anyway, back to our little drill or exercise here. I want you to feel like it's off the front foot, right? You can open your stance a little bit. This is just really getting you to feel like you can on what the notion is. So obviously we always want to worry about our backswing, but for this one occasion, we can kind of just, because we're only focusing on getting this handle out and shaft lean without trying to get the weight forward, and it'll give you the feeling of what it's like to actually rotate with your shoulders down the line, your butt moving behind the ball, and the club shaft moving forward, right? So I'm a little open here. I'm going to go back. Now it's freezing out. That wasn't very good. But anyway, that's the idea, right? So I just want to feel, like I'm really trying to shut this face down without feeling I have to hit down on it, okay? So if we go back, so that feeling there, that feeling, even though I didn't look it, I'm trying to drag the handle a little bit and get this face to shut, but I'm not trying to body reach for the ball. I'm just trying to get it through rotation so I get a really long right side. So that's another piece of it too, is a really, really long right side. If we look at Joaquin Neiman, you'll see the video that'll be here. On driver, his ball position is way up there. He can lean, has such a long right side that he can lean this far back, right? So his arm's still so bent here because he's supinating so well and so square and so rotational that he gets that. I mean, that's like extreme. Don't try that. But that's another thing too, where you might see otherwise, like, oh well, like we want to lean on the ball and the driver. It's like what's most likely going to happen for most people is they're going to lean back, they're going to tilt back like this, and they're going to stay on their backside, and then it causes a whole host of issues, which is obviously not something we want to do. So anyway, that's sort of the exercise here to get the feeling of supinating, but also making sure the club is a little bit more in front and getting you and forcing you to rotate a little bit harder if you're not doing it already. Because again, it's not a drag, it's just a little extra, right? a little extra, but I want you to feel, I want you to let your body and your hands, you know, work around it with the notion of, I'm going to go up, I'm going to try my supination. Again, supination like this. But then I want you to I want you to down, and then I want you to, instead of just releasing it like this, I want you to feel your body rotate around, and I want you to hold your hands out a little bit, right? So the idea here is we're forcing your lower to rotate around your hands, but we're not going to reach for the ball in the upper. Right? That's why if it's a little forward, maybe take a pitching wedge, if not a sand wedge. Just half shots, right? When you go back, I don't want you to do a lot of leaning. You know, take a pretty narrow stance up here. And if you're used to doing this, I don't want you to do it. I just want you to stay very neutral here, and I want you to lead the swing with supination and getting to the ball, right, without moving your upper body over it, right? All right, again, we're going to be offering a subscription model. It's called the World Dream. It'll be on the website, $11 a month. You can see all the benefits listed. We're super excited about it. There's going to be a lot more hands-on, for example, troubleshooting the takeaway, looking at clubs, wedge work. We're probably not going to be releasing, you know, full-on videos like this outside the subscription. There'll be a little hints here or there, or teasers. But hope to see you in there. Hope to sign up. And we're really excited. And again, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.